I wanted to start part 3 of my examination on my videos on the Wilcox brothers, my third video on TED Talk. I'm going to be breaking down a TED Talk by Dr. Bradley Wilcox. He's the medical doctor. Okay, now I know who's the doctor and who's the pharmacist. So Craig Wilcox would be the pharmacist. But we're going to move forward and start looking at what this gentleman has to say. What did he learn about life extension research while studying the Okinawans? Let's see.
I come from a far, far away place called Honolulu. And I love Maui. I'm delighted to be here. And one of the reasons is there's a ton of long-lived people in Maui. And as a geriatrician, someone who works with the aging population, and as a gerontologist, someone who studies.
So he's a guy that specializes in geriatric medicine as well as gerontology. He's an applied gerontologist. So let's see. And I would call him a gerontological anthropologist. But let's get going here.
Aging, it's kind of like a paradise. All of Hawaii is. It's the longest lived state in the Union. So I've been here for 12 years and I never want to leave. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've learned about healthy aging and longevity over the last couple of decades from the Okinawans. A ton of them here, probably a few in the audience today, as well as other long-lived people. I'm going to ask you guys a question. Who here would like to live 100 plus years? If you want to live 100 plus years. Okay, let's see if we can do one better. Who, if they could be healthy and vibrant, extend their youth span, climb up Haleakala Mountain at age 95, swim in the Maui Ocean at age 100, play with their great-great-great-grandchildren, that's the kind of healthy aging and healthy longevity that I want, too. The challenge with
this is the kind of healthy longevity that's promoted by a plant-centered diet. This is what bothers me about these carnivore dieters and these people promoting the carnivore diet. How many of them do you think are going to make it to 100? I mean, let's just be honest. But let's go on with the video.
Aging is, we don't understand a lot about it. And it tends to be it is the biggest risk factor for chronic debilitating diseases. There is a famous person way back, I think in the 1930s. I don't know if anyone's old enough in the audience to remember the 1930s, probably not, but unless you're Okinawan. He said aging is not for sissies. And that's true. It's tough. It's tough to age. But there are people who do it very well. This gentleman I met when I was a young and energetic medical student at the University of Toronto in the 1990s. This man is 105 years old. Yeah, of course he's Okinawan. He's an Okinawan Canadian, and he was the oldest man in Ontario, Canada at the time. He's surrounded by his 90-something-year-old young wife. He married a younger woman. She said the secret was all the healthy foods that she fed him, all these healthy Okinawan foods. I said, well, at that time I was in Canada. I was not so familiar with Okinawa. I didn't know the difference between someone from Okinawa and Oklahoma. But I wanted to find out. So I went to Okinawa, and I got inspired by this man. I thought, this guy's living proof that it's possible to live 100 plus years and be healthy. My first clue of that was when I tried to get him into our study in Toronto. He lived in the back country in Ontario. So I called up and I got his wife Emmy on the phone, and she said, oh, he's not here. I thought, oh gosh, 105? Is he in the hospital? Is he okay? Oh yeah, I'm just very sorry. He's out fishing. I said, okay, I'm going to find out about those Okinawans. So I actually was lucky.
Keep that in mind. He's out fishing at 105. physical activity. Might not sound like a lot of activity fishing, but it's meditative in a way, and it's to a degree physically active, walking to the fishing spot, boating, whatever's involved. It's physical activity. So let's continue.
Now, if my twin brother, I do have a twin brother, he also loves to study aging. He's an anthropologist, so he's more like, I'm more the serious one, he's more on the wild side. But
I was wrong. I thought he was a, what do you call it, a pharmacologist. Apparently he was an anthropologist. But, you know, anthropology is a respectable field. Let's go on.
Identical, we share a lot. And we went together, he was a graduate student and I was a medical student. We went together to Okinawa and we met Dr. Makoto Suzuki, who was the head of the Okinawa Centenarian Study, which is now the longest running study of 100-year-olds in the world. Over 1,000 centenarians have been studied. That's pretty impressive.
That's what makes this data so robust. If you're going to follow a diet, that's what makes this one of the better diets to follow, is the fact that this is very robust data. This is data from a lot of 100-year-olds.
Until you realize there's a lot of centenarians in Okinawa. You can't walk down the street without bumping into one, so it wasn't that hard to recruit them. But I'll show you one of the very first centenarian visits that we had in Okinawa. This is what we do. We crash into the centenarian's home, track her down. There she is. Does she look young and vibrant? And we do physical exam. That's me doing the exam. That's my twin brother on the left. She had no heart murmur. Her heart sounded great. One of the keys to healthy aging. Now look at the difference in height between the generations here. You can see that there's a reason, at least possibly some nutritional clues to why the Okinawans live so long. You're not small like that from osteoporosis. You can get that way, obviously, but a lot of small Okinawans in that generation, because they ate fewer calories, a very plant-rich diet, over 1 kilogram of vegetables a day. Well, that's a lot of vegetables. 2.2 pounds, right, in a kilogram. Now, not just a lot of longevity outliers in Okinawa, but
that's close to, if not around the same as what Dr. Terry Walls recommends at 9 cups a day. I eat quite a bit of vegetables. I eat about, when I'm eating a vegetable-centered diet, recently I've been cycling my survival food, so I've been eating a lot of legumes. But generally speaking, I eat a lot, probably about 2 pounds a day of frozen vegetables, whether it's cruciferous vegetables or other vegetables. You know, I eat quite a bit of vegetables myself, although right now I'm centered on a legume diet because I'm cycling my, my survival supplies. But let's move on.
All around the world there's more and more centenarians, but this lady, Madame Jean Camon of France, is the biggest longevity outlier of them all. Lived 122 years. Yeah, that's a lot. At 115, she was riding a bicycle. She knew Van Gogh. Oh wait, is that a centenarian? Oh no, that's a naked mole rat. It really is. Not naked because he doesn't have his Bermuda shorts or a shirt, but because he's got no hair. See, look at that, no hair. They live underground, they don't need a lot of hair, but they are a longevity outlier. Yeah, they are. They live a long time. How long does the average rat live? Yeah, a couple years, 2 or 3 years. This guy lives 30 years. Unbelievable, it's true. And they don't get cancer. 30 years. They're just like people that can live a long time and delay or avoid the diseases of aging, what we all want to do. So we study them. Not our research group, but our colleagues do.
My friends that were gerontologists, there's one belief that naked mole rats, one of the reasons they do that is they make far much more hyaluronic acid than other mammals.
Now, what about this? This is the island of Saint Helene. That's a tortoise, 68. That's pretty good for a tortoise. It's a long-lived animal. Now, that's the year 1900 up there. Now, this is the same tortoise over 100 years later. Look, he's not even moving around at 68, but 176. He looks great. Maybe that's the secret. Sleep all day. I want to look like that when I'm 176.
What's interesting is sleeping is, when you sleep, it actually does help you clear amyloid plaques and other things from your body. It also is, it activates certain DNA repair mechanisms. Now let's move on.
Well, maybe not exactly like that, but you know what I mean. Now, this is a long-lived fish, 200 years old. A rockfish can live 200 years old. That one is a youngster. That one, I couldn't find a picture of a 200-year-old fish. That one's 115, so still not bad. Trees can live a long time. They're living beings. That tree in Norway, it's a spruce tree.
This is also covered briefly in Life Extension, a Practical and Scientific Approach. It's about the lifespans of various animals and other organisms. And the reason why is because Sandy Shaw, who was the co-author of the book with Dirk Pearson, was a zoologist. So that's one of the reasons it was included, because part of gerontology is looking at the lifespans of other animals and seeing what might be making them live longer, and seeing if those genes can be tweaked in us or what can be tweaked. So let's move on. Let's see where he's going with this.
Almost 10,000 years old. Now I'll show you the winner here. That's a hydra. We live near the ocean, right? A hydra is a polyp-like creature that lives forever. Yeah, unbelievable, isn't it? They continuously regenerate.
That shows you that aging is not unavoidable for all species. Aging is not necessarily a thing, and neither is death. There are immortal life forms. Let's go on.
Their stem cells. As long as they're not eaten by a fish or a shark or something, they will continuously go forever. So what's common about these long-lived organisms, everything from humans to trees? Is there a common mechanism for aging? Well, turns out there is. We share a lot of genes. You can see the percentages with various creatures that are studied in biology of aging studies. Those two creatures on the screen up here, they're my creatures. My daughter and my son, age 6 and age 4. They share 100% of the genes. We all share the same genes in this room, and we differ by 0.1%. That's all. That's what makes us different. It also impacts how long we live. Remember from biology, there's 4 DNA letters, right? A, T, C, G. Remember? They spell all of our genetic code. You just string those letters together, and you get genes. And we get one from our mom, one from our dad. If you take a single letter in a single gene and engineer it into a yeast or a mouse or another, what we call model organism of human aging, it will live a lot longer, be more metabolically efficient. It also gets physiologically smaller. Now, these gene variants, I'll call them, they occur naturally in the human population. Maybe you have a gene that has 1,000 DNA letters, and there's a single different one between you and you. Maybe 20% of you have one version, and most of us have the other version. That one single letter can result in double the odds of us living to be 100. or triple the odds if you have one of those from mom and one from dad. Who do you think has that letter in this picture? Well, interestingly, these letters occur all through the model organism, the animal kingdom, but we searched for years in humans to find that a letter that corresponded to those mice or worms or fruit flies, and then nothing until 2008 when our research group at the Cook County Medical Center, Honolulu Heart Program, and the John A. Burns School of Medicine, Department of Geriatric Medicine, our group, we study aging and gerontology geriatrics. We found a single letter change, a G letter. If you got a G letter instead of a T letter, you had double the odds to live to be 100. If you had two letters, triple. This fellow, Chuck Yogi, he lives over on the Big Island. He's in our study. This guy, I'm pretty sure he has one of those single letters. He's got over 20 world records in track and field. This is at 89 years of age. His mom lived to be 100, his dad 98. That's 200 years between them. I'll bet he'll be up there too. Now, it's great if you got one of those letters, you live a long and healthy life, but what about the less fortunate who don't have one of those letters? Well, it turns out that our genes are not just sort of inert pieces of DNA.
Now, this is important to understand. Your health habits, your diet, your exercise, these things help to express or silence genes. Keep this in mind. This is where I think he's going with it. I'm reacting to this. I did not watch this yet. Let's see where he's going with this.
They just sit there and don't do anything. They do a lot of stuff. They control, not only do they affect how long we live, but, you know, how much we weigh, how we process food, all kinds of things. And this gene that we found, this FOXO3 gene it's called, it's a stress resistance gene. It gives you more resistance to stress. But if you do a little bit of stressful things to your body, it appears what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. If you do a bit of exercise, it turns on the gene. Gets you.
A quote from Nietzsche.
Gets the gene.
Did you hear that? If you do some stressful things like exercise and eat certain foods that have these special nutrients in it, these phytonutrients, it will turn on this gene. So let's see what he has to say.
Making healthy proteins. It's a stress resistance gene. You can also stress the body, interestingly. It's kind of like a small stress by eating certain foods that turn on this gene. And this gene is ahead of a big network of other genes that impact all of the aging of the body. That's my brother outside his house in Okinawa. My brother Craig, he loves sweet potatoes. That's not an ice cream truck, that's a sweet potato truck. No wonder the Okinawans live so long. Now, eating fewer calories is a mild stress on the body. This is a study done at the University of Wisconsin on aging rhesus monkeys. For 20 years, one of these guys has been eating 25% fewer calories. Which one do you think it is? Yeah, the guy that looks healthier. And he has aged more slowly, less disease. Turns out the experimental group that ate just fewer calories is living a lot longer too. I don't know if he's happier, but he's living longer. Now, we can't all eat 25% fewer foods. I don't want to eat less. I can tell you, I'm not calorically.
He's probably going into caloric restriction mimetics. Let's see what he's going to talk about right here. It's going to be about phytonutrients, I almost guarantee it. Let's see.
Restricted, but I am trying to eat healthy foods. So scientists in aging are now working on these foods called caloric restriction mimetic foods.
Booyah.
Mimetic. They mimic the effects of caloric restriction because they got healthy compounds in them. Some of them are right here in the Hawaii diet. Okinawan sweet potatoes, green tea, turmeric. Look at the last one, chlorophyta. Those are algae that produce astaxanthin. It turns out if you stress the algae, they produce all this anti-stress hormone called astaxanthin. It's a plant hormone. Now
that's one of the many supplements that I take.
Prednisone. Look, that is that's a drug mimic of your body's cortisol, your anti-stress hormone. You get stressed, this hormone gets turned on, fight or flight, it protects you against stress. unless you take too much of it for too long. Because drugs like that can cause osteoporosis, stomach ulcers, but there's natural plant stress hormones like curcumin from turmeric, astaxanthin from seaweeds, catechins from green tea. These are under active investigation.
The catechins are also in cocoa.
To see how they can be used to decrease inflammation in the body, which is a major driver of aging. Caloric restriction mimetics. Now, there's other technologies under development right now that we can do in animal studies and are starting to do in human studies. There was a study published not long ago where scientists were able to...
So this is going into gene editing. We are actually reaching a level where we can control our own evolution. Not just through diet and not just through exercise, but through actively changing the genes. Now, let's let him continue.
Markedly improve the eyesight of unfortunate children that were born with a genetic defect that made them blind. So you could splice in the gene...
Giving sight to the blind. Science is doing what Jesus allegedly did.
Correction into a virus. And viruses are hijackers. They go into your body, they hijack your DNA, and they make copies of themselves. And
listen to how beautiful this is. You take the RNA out of the virus, and you put the genes in there that you want in there. You inject that into a person, and instead of spreading a virus, it spreads the genes that you want expressed, giving eyesight to the blind. How beautiful is that?
And eventually they die because the body figures out what's going on. Well, you can use an inert virus, put in this corrected gene, it'll go into the genome and fix the problem. And hopefully someday we can fix problems with things like macular degeneration, a major cause of age-related blindness. Stem cells. We can use stem cells now. A lot of experience going on with stem cells to correct, say, aging heart defects. You have a heart attack, your tissue's dead. Rather than having a heart transplant, go right in there, fix the cells. Nervous system, fix the aging brain cells. Immune system, fix those cells. So there's a lot of things that are coming down the pike that could help us all age.
So there's a gentleman, Aubrey de Grey, that he wants to live forever, and he wants to promote people living forever. So people always like to say, well, how can you live forever? Well, his view is, do you see classic cars? And people will, of course, say yes. And the reason why is because people show those cars the love and care and replace the broken down parts. Soon we will be able to do that with the human body. In fact, we probably can do it right now if we saw more funding in that area. Let's move on.
More healthfully. But what about all of us who are already halfway or three-quarters, the way there, is there hope for us? I'm going to end the talk soon with a message of hope. It's never too late. So this is from a study that we did just recently in the Honolulu Heart Program at Kuakini Medical Center, where we took like I said, a study of over 8,000.
It's never too late as long as the basic science is being supported. This is why we need the funding of basic science from the National Institute of Health, the CDC, the Center for Aging and Disease, etc. We need that basic science research funded.
American man of Japanese and Okinawan ancestry that we followed for almost 50 years. It's one of the best studies of aging in the world, and it's one of the studies that brought me right here to Hawaii to work. Now, if you look at this slide, you can see that this is a population survival curve, and everyone's alive in the beginning of the study. It's a bunch of healthy 70-year-olds, and we said, okay, let's look at the guys in the study that avoided major risk factors for disease and disability as you age, like hypertension, high blood sugar, unhealthy diets. So if you just had the right numbers, what would it do? Well, that's the best you can do right there. By the age of 90, if you can see that about 60% of that population is still alive, but dropping off, every time you add one of those risk factors, the survival of the men dropped off. Until if you had 5 or more, you only had half the chance of living to be 90 and being healthy. So there is a lot you can do if you just do the simple things. Eat a healthy diet, exercise.
Listen to that.
on. Thank you. There's the survival.
Listen again to what you can do simply by exercising, eating a healthy diet, and taking care of yourself.
All of the men dropped off until if you had 5 or more, you only had half the chance of living to be 90 and being healthy. So there is a lot you can do if you just do the simple things. Eat a healthy diet, exercise, go see your doctor for your preventive exams. And finally, this is a message of hope for all the kids and the...
That's what Ray Kurzweil calls Bridge 1 technologies. When I talk about Ray Kurzweil, I'm going to go over the 3 bridges to immortality, but that's not yet. That'll be when I go over Ray Kurzweil's ideas. So let's move on.
People who want to be kids. If you live 107 years, like Mr. Nakamura here on his 107th birthday, you could probably eat all the cake you want. Thank you.
So this is a guy, Dr. Kirk Hamilton, and he's a doctor. He's wrote a book, a couple books, I believe. This is his YouTube channel. Please visit it. And he has a show called Staying Healthy Today. And here he's going to talk to, I believe this is Craig Wilcox, might be Bradley Wilcox again, about turning on that FOXO gene. So let's hear what they have to say.
Hi, my name is Kirk Hamilton, and this is the Staying Healthy Today show, and I'm here again in Okinawa, Japan. And I'm here with Dr. Craig Wilcox, and it's a pleasure. I'm in his office at Okinawa International University. And we're going to have a discussion about heart disease and some of the superfoods in the Okinawan diet, and we're also going to talk about your genes and heart disease and the Okinawan diet. So thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Kirk.
So here we go. We got, in fact, the reason I brought it up is I think we can start off with natto. You can actually buy natto. Now, I've only heard about natto as being this terrible...
Most of these foods, I started shopping at a Korean supermarket when I became a vegan just because it's easier to find certain foods. At a Korean supermarket, like healthy grains and, different kinds of rice, things of that nature, barley, etc. So that's what got me shopping at a Korean supermarket. Natto is a fermented soybean product that's easily obtainable at a Korean supermarket for a very, very affordable price. But if you try and obtain it from a regular supermarket, you'd be paying through the nose. Definitely if you tried to get it through like a Whole Foods or something like that. I never shopped at those hippie stores. I'm not big into the hippie crap. So that's one of the main reasons I shopped at a Korean grocery store is I can't stand hippies. So, I'm just explaining that. So he's going to talk about some of these foods that help turn on these genes, or this gene, this longevity gene. Let's go.
cool tasting thing that makes you pucker, and it supposedly has some vitamin K2 in it, but I'm going to let Dr. Wilcox talk about, at least start from here, natto and heart disease.
Well, natto being a soy-based, fermented soy-based product, carries with it the health properties, beneficial health properties for cardiovascular disease of other soy products. So there's been evidence that allowed for an FDA claim regards to reduced risk for cardiovascular disease due to lipids, lower cholesterol, lower triglycerides, protein. Got lots of nice vegetable proteins in there, and there's actually some enzymes from natto that have been shown to be plaque fighters in terms of cognitive health. So it's quite an interesting and I think very healthy food. You're getting the fermentation process helps bring out these enzymes that are good for cognitive health. Mm-hmm. So that's for the natto. So you get all the properties of increase in some B vitamins, and so all the healthy properties of fermenting a food. Now this is what I get for my kids. It's a little package, I just break it off like that.
Kids actually do eat these foods.
Yes, and you can open it up.
And you buy this in a regular grocery store?
Yep. Bought it today.
All right, I have to take. Can you open one up, because I've heard this tastes terrible, so I will.
Oh, you can.
You can buy it in a regular grocery store in Okinawa, just like I can buy it in a regular Korean grocery store here. You can buy it in a regular grocery store here, especially at Walmart. Walmart started carrying natto, but you're going to be paying more money than if you get it at a well, not at Walmart, but if you go to a regular grocery store. At Walmart, it's actually cheaper than the Korean grocery. But it's and actually what's funny, the Korean grocery is H Mart, in case you want to know.
Be brave enough.
The reason I say that is there's H Marts all over the place. They're a Korean tradition.
Okay. All right.
My brain won't shrink. And
We'll see.
yeah.
All right. Then you see it's like this, and you take off that little
Oh
piece
boy,
like that.
this doesn't look
You
good.
can see.
This doesn't look good.
Very. Oh, but don't forget. Got to put a little bit of flavoring in there.
Is
Now,
it vinegar? Or what is it? There's
yes, it's vinegar-like, flavoring. So
I'm really scared to do this, and I'll eat anything.
now you should be feeling sharper, cognitively sharper, any second now.
My blood cholesterol is dropping. I can feel it. Well, actually, that doesn't taste bad at all.
Not too bad. Yeah. You think the taste is a little too strong? You can mix it in with miso soup.
Yeah,
which is,
I can see that mellowing it a little bit.
Yes.
All right, so we got that down. How about the controversy of omega-3 fats? So where do the Okinawans get their omega-3 fats? Do they just eat fish, or do they put? Well, I guess I don't see an elder taking fish oil capsules. But so where do they get their omega-3 fats?
one being fish. The Okinawan elders grew up on farms or in fishing communities, so they were farmers or fisher folk. So those who were farmers got the fish from the fishermen, and the fishermen got the vegetables from the farmers.
So would they eat fish every single day?
In small amounts, it was often consumed.
And this is one reason I consume canola oil, is because canola oil is a more readily available source of omega-3 fatty acids, as well as monounsaturated fat, which also stimulates certain longevity pathways. So let's continue.
The other main source is through seaweeds, or what I call sea veggies.
The omega-3s in seaweed.
Yes.
Well, that they eat daily, or
That's a daily consumed food.
seaweed
yes.
is daily.
Yes.
You want to be careful about consuming too much seaweed daily, because it does have a lot of iodine. Just keep that in mind. So I only consume seaweed. If I'm eating like roasted seaweed snacks, I'll probably eat maybe 2 or 3 of them a day. But if it's something like kelp, that's very rare. Maybe once or twice a week, I might have a serving of kelp.
So plant sources as well as fish.
So then let's get to the oils that the Okinawan use in their cooking. In the olden days, I thought there was very little oil. They used pork fat, right? Way back in the day when they were very poor and very...
Right.
So we've gone from there, and it's not a lot of pork fat, was it? Or
No, I mean,
God, my fingers are sticking out. you got me.
first of all, you have
This poor guy looks like he's gonna die from the natto.
the type of fat. I mean, when you have pigs that are raised outside and eating sweet potatoes,
Well, they're
healthy sweet potatoes and sweet potato greens, and they're free range. It's a healthier type of fat than you think pork fat. Oh my God! But you'd have to think about how animals were raised and what they were fed in the old days, and it's you have a higher amount of monounsaturated and polyunsaturated omega-3 fatty acids even. So every animal fat is a mixture of fats. It's not just saturated fat in animal fat. So, but
That's why people don't understand that butter, like butter that, just whole cream butter, that has a fair amount of monounsaturated fat. Monounsaturated fat is a healthy fat, however, saturated fat is not. That's why you can get away with a small amount of butter. Okay, just not lots and lots and lots and lots of butter. But that's also why I would recommend excluding butter, because people like to eat a lot of stuff.
Whole percentage of fat in the total
original
diet, in the traditional diet, was less than 10%.
Right, so that's a low-fat diet.
So
That's more, okay, so that would be in the line of the Esselstyn and McDougall's and Barnard diets of today.
right.
Now, let's fast forward. That was in the 40s or so?
Yeah, yes, in the first half of the 20th century, basically.
Okay. So if we fast forward, not to the terrible Okinawan diet, meaning the fast food diet, but I'm talking about the elders now. Do they use oil in their stir frying, and what kind of oils do they use?
Yeah, the consumption of edible oils has really gone up in the.
Now, I agree with Dr. Terry Walls. If you're going to be eating healthy plant fats, don't heat them. That's my view there. But let's continue.
In the past few decades, so in the immediate post-war period of the 1950s and to the 1960s, you still saw the Okinawan sweet potato as the major source of calories, and that was mostly steamed.
Right.
So another way of cooking was stir.
Of course, steaming, boiling. Steaming is obviously, microwaving is the best for plants to preserve the nutrients. And what that does is that helps preserve the nutrients. Nothing's leaching into water. And if you do boil or stew, remember to eat the water. But what you need to understand with things like sweet potatoes and things of that nature is you want to keep the nutrients in the food, not in the water. The problem with frying is when you heat oils, they can form carcinogenic compounds, AGEs, I've talked about them, which can cause cross-linking and premature aging. That's why you have to be careful about heating oils. So let's continue.
Fry, and you do use oil. So once oil became widely available in the late, in the mid 60s, 70s, the consumption of oil fat in the diet went from less than 10% to about 30%, not about 28% now if you look at the modern.
That's not a terrible. I remember I went over the macronutrient breakdown of the modern Okinawan diet. It's not terrible, but you have to consider what kind of oils are they getting this from. So let's continue.
Okinawan
So
diet.
that's the, all right, so
And how hot are they heating these oils? Are these oils denatured by the heating process? Are they forming AGEs? And that's why, like Terry Wall says, don't heat healthy plant fats. I agree with that.
I'm trying to separate
But
if that was a healthy elder consuming that amount now, or is that...
elders, they're about 26%
Okay,
in
so
terms of.
That's a fattier diet. So
fat
where do they get their
consumption.
fat from then? What
Mostly edible oils, cooking oils such as canola oil and.
Canola oil and soy oil are actually very healthy oils that are very high in monounsaturated fats. However, heating these oils can result in something bad. That's why I still say don't heat these oils. But they are high in monounsaturated fat, which is a heart-healthy fat, and also helps, as Dr. David Sinclair says, to turn on sirtuins, certain sirtuins like sirtuin 1, which helps to activate anti-aging pathways.
Soy, they call it salad oil, salada yu in Japanese.
Right.
It's a mixture of soy and canola oils. That's widely available, and so that's.
those are-
but people consume these days all kinds of oils.
Right.
Olive oil, here in Okinawa too, that people like olive oil. So, but so the elders went through this period of where they consumed very little oil, most of their lives to later ages where oil became more widely available, and now
Right.
they can.
All right, so what are their
Consume their stir fries.
cardioprotective agents? We didn't get... The last discussion, turmeric came up. Is turmeric cardiovascular protective, or that more just inflammatory and neuroprotective?
It's more well known for its neuroprotective properties for cognitive health, but it's actually it stimulates one of our longevity genes called FOXO. So FOXO is a gene in the insulin signaling pathway, and it's very much involved with oxidative stress and inflammation. So it's tapped to lower oxidative stress and inflammation through downstream gene targets. And turmeric, or curcumin, the active ingredient, will upregulate this function of this gene. So actually, yes, to make a...
How about that? Well,
that's a
speaking
short story
of
long.
segues, let's talk about the FOXO gene, since we're talking about the heart. And you did a study, and you came up with some results. Now, my bias is I don't want everybody to believe in genes, because then they don't do anything with their lifestyle.
Right.
So I'm going to await your results with trepidation. So tell us what you found out.
Well, interestingly, what we found is that there's different versions of the FOXO. We looked at, there's 4 FOXOs in the human beings, and one of them is FOXO3. And we found that FOXO3, if you had the protective version of that particular gene, you can have 0, 1, or 2 copies of the protective version. And it's one allele called a G. So if you had 1 G, you had double the chance of reaching the age of 100. If you have 2 copies of that gene, the protective version, 2 Gs, then you would have 3 times the chance of it reaching the age of 100. And we said, okay, well, great. If you have the protective version of the gene, you got a higher chance of living longer. So we said, okay, if you're living longer, you're not dying from something. What are you not dying from? Is it cancer? Is it stroke? Is it cardiovascular disease? What we found was that the main bang for your buck is coming from reduced risk for coronary artery disease, the number 1 killer in America. So you found out a pattern that, if you had the genes and you did diet, you got one result. If you had a bad diet and you had the genes, you got another result. If you had a good diet and good genes, you had another result. You want to? Yeah, we looked at, thought, this is an interesting question. And we're always talking about the strength of genes versus lifestyle. So we said, which is better? Which is more powerful? So you have the protective version of the gene. You're at lower risk for coronary artery disease. Okay. Well, what if you have a good diet and you have the protective version of the gene? Well, those people live the longest. Then we said, okay, say you have a poor diet, but you got that protective version of the gene. Do they live longer than somebody who has a very good diet but lacks the protective version? What we found out was, okay, in this case, lifestyle trumps genes, because those who had a very good diet...
That's important to note. Lifestyle trumps genes. If you have a very good diet, you live longer than if you simply have that protective gene and don't follow a good diet.
Live longer.
So if you don't have the protective gene, but you follow a good diet, you live longer than somebody that has the gene, the protective gene, and doesn't follow a good diet. So good diet and good lifestyle trumps good genes in this case.
Hey, than those who had a poor diet but had the protective gene. So we found that those who had the good lifestyle, the good diet, did better, despite the fact that they lacked the protective.
Were these Okinawans, or was this within the Okinawan population, or just in general, when you did the study?
This was within our Japanese cohort population, so Okinawans and other Japanese. Yeah.
Right.
So it's good to have the protective version of the gene, no doubt. It will reduce your risk for dying from coronary artery disease. But a good diet is more important. With a good diet, you can actually activate that gene.
Right.
So even if you don't have
With a good diet, you can activate that gene.
protective version of the gene, if you have the protective version, it's activated almost all the time.
Right.
But if you lack the protective version, you can still activate that gene through your diet.
That's so key. That's so key. That reminds me of the Ornish work and how he, on his plant-based diet, people for prostate cancer, it activated some 500 genes one way or another, upregulated, downregulated.
Right, and that's what the FOXO, it's a superintendent gene. It controls all these downstream target genes. So it's telling all these other genes, important genes for coronary artery disease, what to do. So if you activate FOXO, you're activating also all these other genes. And you can do that with FOXO activators. So like Curcumin is a very strong FOXO activator. Soy. So tofu. Sweet potatoes.
And those are all good for heart disease then.
Right. So what you have with the traditional Okinawan diet, and why you have such low levels of heart disease in Okinawa, is not only do you have this healthy diet with a low amount of calories, but high amount of nutrients.
CRON, caloric restriction with optimal nutrition. You can't have one or the other, it has to be both. And you have to have mild caloric restriction and optimal nutrition.
You have all these FOXO activators. So they're like calorie restriction mimetics. We know that
Calorie restriction mimetics. Remember, I covered that in my previous video.
calorie restriction, you live longer. But with the Okinawa diet, what you have is the powerful effects of caloric restriction, but without the restriction. Because you're getting these.
Now people are paying attention. Now people
You're actually eating more on the traditional Okinawan diet in terms of grams of food per day. And you're getting tons of phytonutrients. All these
Remember I said this earlier, this is also a thing with the zone diet or the South Beach diet or similar vegetable-centered diets. You're eating more volume of food, but less calories, because a plant-centered diet, as long as you're not eating the wrong types of things, like as long as you're not eating a whole bunch of fat or a whole bunch of simple carbohydrates and things like that, you're generally going to get a lot more food for a lot less calories.
nutrients, but a low amount of calories. Why? Because the diet is calorie poor, but nutrient dense.
Calorie poor and nutrient dense. Does that remind you of what Dr. Walford said when I did my videos on Dr. Walford?
And that's the ideal combination for healthy aging, and in particular, reducing your risk for cardiovascular disease.
We're talking to Dr. Craig Wilcox. This has been about the, I don't want to say superfoods, but the really good foods in the Okinawan diet, and one of the reasons, the many reasons they have lower incidence of heart disease. If you'd like to go to stayinghealthytoday.com.
And that's all for this video. Go to stayinghealthytoday.com, as he said. But that's going to be all for this video. I'm going to continue later, either later tonight, or I'm going to continue tomorrow with another video on this topic.